This is a key to the second worksheet dealing with writing equations of lines, and in particular, each of the problems will have something related to parallel or perpendicular. And the four problems we have here, the directions state write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form with the following information, and then show all work to receive full credit. So number one, you want to find the equation of a line in slope-intercept form that passes through this point and is parallel to the line whose equation is y equals 2x minus 3. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So whenever you want to find or write the equation of a line, there are a couple of ways you can do that we've talked about. One is to use slope-intercept form. So approach number one, slope-intercept form. So approach one, slope-intercept form, and slope-intercept form, intercept form, is y equals mx plus b. So if you're going to use approach number one, slope-intercept form, you need to know the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, so if you want to find the equation of a line that contains this point and is parallel to the line whose equation is this, you can find the slope of this line that goes to this point because you know that the line that goes to this point and this line are parallel. So if you know the slope of this line, then you know the slope of this line. And then now you would know this. All right, well, remember, this equation here is in slope-intercept form. So since this is in slope-intercept form, remember slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. The coefficient of x is your slope, as long as you have it in slope-intercept form. So remember, y must be by itself. So the slope is 2 here. Well, if the slope is 2 here, then the slope of the line that goes to this point or contains this point is also 2 because the two lines are parallel. So right now I know this. I know the slope of this line I'm interested in is 2. So I have y equals 2x plus b. And all you have to do now is to find b. Well, to find b, you have to know an x and a y, meaning that you have to know a point on that line, and you do. A point on that line is negative 3, 4. So you know a point on that line is negative 3, 4. So in place of x, I'm going to substitute negative 3, and in place of y, I will substitute 4, and that will allow me to solve for b, which is the y-intercept. And so I get y, which is 4, equals 2 times x, which is negative 3, plus b. So 4 equals negative 6 plus b. Adding 6 to both sides, I get b equals 10. So the y-intercept is 10, so therefore the answer, because remember they do want the equation to be in slope-intercept form, so you have to get y by itself. So the answer then will be y equals the slope, which is 2 times x, and then plus the y-intercept, so that's positive 10. All right, so that's one approach. The other approach number 2 that we've talked about, approach 2, is to use point-slope form. All right, point-slope form. And so when using point-slope form, you have y minus y1 is equal to the slope times x minus x1. And in order to use point-slope form, you have to know a point on the line, so a point on the line, x1, y1, and you have to know the slope. All right. Well, in this case, I know the slope. They're parallel, right? So the slope is 2. So the slope is 2. And a point on that line is this right here, negative 3, 4. So there's your x1 and there's your y1. So in place of x1, you're going to substitute negative 3. And in place of y1, you're going to substitute 4. So we have y minus 4 equals the slope times x minus a negative 3. Now before you distribute, make sure you rewrite that x subtract negative 3 so you don't mess up. X subtract negative 3 means the same thing as x plus the opposite of negative 3. So it'll be x plus 3. So y minus 4 equals 2 times x plus 3. Now we distribute, because remember we're trying to get this in slope-intercept form, so I have to get y by itself. So y minus 4, that's a y, equals 2 times x is 2x, 2 times 3 is 6, and then finally adding 4 to both sides, I get y equals 2x plus 10. Okay, so Notice you get the same equation. Different approaches, but same equation. So approach number 1 we used was slope-intercept form, and approach number 2 was point-slope form. All right, and to do both of those, we used the information that was given. All right, so that was number 1. Okay, let's look at number 2. So number 2, this time, the point, so you want to find the equation of a line that goes through this point. All right, so the point is 6, 3, but is perpendicular to the equation whose line is y equals 3x plus 1. All right, so you want to find the equation of this line. Okay, you want to find the equation of this line that goes to this point. But you know that the equation of this line, or this line, is perpendicular to this line whose equation is this. Well, in order to find the equation of the line that goes to this point right here, you also have to know the slope. Well, what is that slope? That's what you have to find, right? That's what you have to find. So this is the work. So that's what you have to find. You have to find the slope of that line. Well, the slope of this line is perpendicular to this line. So if you can find the slope of this line, then you know the slope of that line. Remember, those two lines are perpendicular. Well, this is in slope-intercept form. So right away you know the slope. So since this is in slope-intercept form, the slope here is 3, right? The coefficient of x. Well, if this line is perpendicular to this line, then the slope of this line then has to be the perpendicular, has to be the opposite reciprocal of this one. So the reciprocal of 3 is 1/3, and this is positive, therefore this must be negative. All right? So the slope of that line is negative 1/3. So now let's use the two approaches. So approach 1, slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. I now know the slope. I don't know the y-intercept. That's what I have to find. So I have y equals negative 1/3 x plus b, right? And so to find b, I'm going to use the fact that a point on that line is 6, 3. So I'm going to use this point 6, 3. So there's your x, there's your y. So I get 3, y is 3, so I get 3 equals negative 1/3 times x, which is 6, plus b. So I get 3 equals negative 1/3 of 6. 3 and 6 is 2. So negative 1/3 of 6 is negative 2, plus b. Adding 2 to both sides, I get b is 5. Now b is 5, all right? So you got to write the equation though. So the equation is y equals the slope, negative 1/3 x plus 5. Okay? So there's your equation, the slope-intercept form. The second approach, so approach 2, so some of you could have done it this way, was to use point-slope form, y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So you now know the slope, so the slope is negative 1/3, right? And you know a point in that line, is 6, 3, except in this equation, we'll let this be x1, this be y1. So you have y minus y1, which is 3, equals the slope, which is negative 1/3. Remember, perpendicular, negative 1/3, times x minus x1, which is 6. Now let's go ahead and distribute. I get y minus 3 equals negative 1/3 x. A negative 1/3 times a negative 6 is a positive 2. That's 2. Adding 3 to both sides to get y by itself, I get y equals negative 1/3 x plus 5. And notice those two are the same. All right, so that was number 2. Okay, number 3. So let's look at number 3. All right, so number 3, you want to find the equation of the line that goes to this point, but is parallel to this line. So to find the equation of this line that contains this point, you have to know the slope of that line. So to find the slope of that line, you need to know the slope of this line because they're parallel. But notice that in this situation, it's not as easy to determine the slope as it was for the other two. Because in the other two, it was already in slope-intercept form, so the coefficient of x was the slope. But here, this is not slope-intercept form. So let's go ahead and get y by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 3x from both sides to get y by itself. So 0 plus 2y is 2y equal negative 3x plus 6, negative 3x plus 6. Dividing both sides by 2, I get y equals negative 3 halves x, negative 3 halves x, and then plus 6 divided by 2 is 3. So this equation is equivalent to this equation. So therefore I can find the slope of this line here, which is negative 3 halves. So the slope of this line is the same as the slope of this line because those two lines are parallel. So this is also going to be negative 3 halves. All right, and so now we can find the equation. Approach 1, slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. I now know the slope, negative 3 halves, so I get y equals negative 3 halves x plus b. So I got to find this y-intercept. To find the y-intercept, I'm going to use the fact that a point on that line is negative 8, negative 1, right? And so this is your x, this is your y. So in place of y, I'm going to substitute negative 1 equals negative 3 halves times x, which is negative 8, plus b. Negative 8 is divisible by 2, so let's go ahead and do that. So negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Let me go ahead and rewrite this just to show you. All right, so 2 to 2 is 1, 2 to negative 8 is negative 4. So negative 3 times a negative 4 is a positive 12. So you get negative 1 equals 12 plus b, right? And then subtract 12 from both sides. A negative 1 and a negative 12 is a negative 13 equals b. So you found your y-intercept now. So therefore the answer, the equation of this line that contains this point and has this slope is going to be y equals, you must say y equals the slope, which is negative 3 halves x, and then b here is negative 13, so we say negative 3 halves x minus 13. And there's your answer. All right, so approach number 2 is to use point-slope form, and we'll still get the same answer. So y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1, right? So the slope of this line is negative 3 halves, and then a point on that line is negative 8, negative 1. So there's your x1, there's your y1. So we're going to substitute this information into the point-slope form. So I got y minus y1, which is a negative 1, equals the slope, which is negative 3 halves, times x minus a negative 8. Rewriting the subtraction here to an addition problem, we get y subtract a negative 1 means y plus 1 equals negative 3 halves, and then x subtract negative 8 means x plus 8. And now distributing, I get y plus 1 equals negative 3 halves x is 3 halves times x is negative 3 halves x. A negative 3 halves times 8, make sure you know how to deal with that, right? A negative 3 halves times 8, 2 to 2 is 1, 2 to 8 is 4, negative 3 times 4 is a negative 12. And then subtracting 1 from both sides, combining like terms, I get y equals, that's a 0 here, y equals negative 3 halves x minus 13. And then notice those two are the same regardless of which approach you took. All right, so that's number 3. All right, and then finally, let's look at number 4. So number 4, we have this. All right, we have, you want to find the equation of the line that contains this point and now is perpendicular to this line. Now, this is not that bad because this is already in slope-intercept form. So the slope of this line here, the slope of this line, since this slope-intercept form is a coefficient of x, that's negative 4/3. All right, so therefore the slope of this line that contains this point has to be perpendicular, has to be the opposite reciprocal of this. So first of all, the reciprocal of 4/3 is 3/4, right? So 3/4. And if this is negative, then this has to be positive. So there's the slope of this line that contains that point. All right, so now we know the slope, we know a point of the line, so let's go ahead and find the equation. So some of you probably used approach number 1, which is slope-intercept form, right? And so to use slope-intercept form, you have to know the slope and the y-intercept. Right now I know the slope, that's all I know. I don't know the y-intercept. That's not a y-intercept. Remember, y-intercept, the x-coordinate has to be 0. So I have y equals the slope times x plus b. So now I've got to find b. To find b, I'm going to use the fact that a point on that line is 4, 2. So there's your x, there's your y, so I'm going to substitute that into here. So y is 2, so I get 2 equals 3/4 times x, which is 4, plus b. Then 3/4 of 4, so the 4's divide out, you're left with 3, right? So I get 2 equals 3 plus b. Subtract 3 from both sides, I get b to be -1. So there's your y-intercept. So that's where the graph's going to cross the y-axis. So therefore the answer in slope-intercept form is y equals the slope, which is 3/4, times x, and then plus b, so that's -1. So 3/4 x minus 1. Don't forget, you must say y equals in your answer, because it's got to be written as an equation in slope-intercept form, so y equals. The other approach that some of you probably took was instead you probably used the the point-slope form. So y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So I know the slope of that line is this, and I know a point of that line is this. So a point of that line is 4, 2. So this will be your x1. This is your y1. All right, so I get y minus y1, which is 2, equals the slope, which is 3/4, times x minus x1, which is 4. Distributing to get y by itself, because you want this in slope-intercept form, I have y minus 2 equals 3/4 times x is 3/4 x, minus, and then 3/4 times 4. So remember, you're saying 3/4 times 4, right? So 3/4 times 4. That's what this says right here. The 4's divide out, so 3, that's a 1. 3 times 1 is 3. So you get 3/4 x minus 3, and then finally adding 2 to both sides, align your like terms. You get y equals 3/4 x. A -3 and a +2 is a -1. And notice those two are the same. Okay, so that was the key to this worksheet. So remember, though, it did say show work. So it is you are expected, when either using this approach or this approach, to show your work. That is necessary. All right, so that's the key to that worksheet. But don't forget, let me just go ahead and write down the answers. So number 1, you would have gotten y equals 2x plus 10. Number 2, we found that to be y equals -1/3 x plus 5. And then number 3, when we did the work, we had y equals -3/2 x minus 13. And then finally, number 4, which we just did. Remember, here's the work. These are your answers. This is the equation in slope-intercept form. You got y equals 3/4 x minus 1. Okay? All right, so that is the key to this worksheet.